a supporter of numerous charities, an accomplished writer, and the author of 3 novels.
Jackie, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that introduction. And I have to tell you, I'm very pleased to be here, but I have to kind of straighten out the Lise Waterman thing and why I'm your master of ceremonies. Lise called me, I guess it was about a month ago. The telephone rang. The operator said, "Mr. Scarborough." I said, "Yes." "I have a collect call from Lise Waterman. Will you accept the charges?" And Lise has this wacky sense of humor, and of course I said, "Yes, Lise, I'll indulge you. I'll accept the charges." And Lise said, "Chuck, I think you are, without a doubt, the best newsman at NBC, and I'd like you to come down and be the MC for our luncheon in Palm Beach." And I said, "Lise, I'm so flattered. I'm so thrilled, really, but I must tell you there are others much more prominent, much more accomplished than I at NBC. We have Brian Williams and Matt Lauer." She said, "Oh, I tried them. They wouldn't accept the charges." I'd like to tell you a little story. It's a story about a woman named Joanne Murray. Joanne was in her mid-20s. She was an aspiring writer, struggling with her first novel, with her finances, with a failing marriage. And Joanne slipped into a deep depression, so deep that she was seriously contemplating suicide. The only thing that kept Joanne Murray from taking her own life was the love of her tiny daughter. Somehow, she pulled herself away from the edge of the abyss. She sought help. She overcame, she conquered her depression. And Joanne Murray went on to finish that novel. Over the next 20 years, she sold more than 400 million books. Her net worth today exceeds $1 billion. And along the way, she reverted to her maiden name and she added a middle initial. You may know her. Joanne Murray is J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series of books. And we only, in the last couple of weeks, learned the secret of her depression. We only learned in the last couple of weeks how close the world came to losing one of the more creative and productive minds. So as we enjoy our lunch and we contemplate the mission of the organization you all are so generously supporting today, keep this in mind. How many other potential J.K. Rowlings are out there right now who will lose the battle that she won? You know, over the course of my broadcast career, I've observed humanity in all its incarnations, the positive, the negative, the uplifting, the demoralizing. Certain events seem to repeat themselves over and over again with the same predictable theme. The outstanding young actors who overdose on alcohol and drugs, the family violence of murder and suicides, mothers who kill their own children, school massacres. Now, many of these certainly are criminal acts, but that's not the only explanation. They are also the products of depression and its various related disorders. I've also reported on the medical updates, the positive effects of antidepressants, the negative effects of antidepressants, the non-effects of antidepressants. So depression in all of its various forms has been a major topic in my news and in your news as well. From what I've observed and I've read over the years, I know depression is an alarmingly huge problem. Worldwide, 120 million people suffer from depression. In fact, it was recently reported that since the introduction of SRI, antidepressant medications, except for small, incremental improvements and adjustments, there has been no change in the treatment of depression, no change in 20 years. And that's why I, as a journalist, wanted to be with you today, because I wanted to share some very important news with you about an innovative new approach to tracking and tackling the global problem of depression, seeking solutions in a way that has never been tried before. Now, even if you think you've never been touched by depression, directly or indirectly, consider this. Depression's toll in human suffering is truly staggering. Depression affects somewhere between 32 to 36 million Americans. That's over 16% of the population. That is 1 out of every 6 of us. And the numbers are going up, they are not going down. Especially in the baby boom generation. Did you know that in the baby boom generation, women are twice as likely as men to suffer depression? Half of those who are clinically depressed want to die. And every year, 12 million people attempt suicide. The disability factor of depression is enormous. It's not nearly as well known. Depression is the leading cause of disability in our country, the leading cause for people ages 15 to 44. 6 years ago, it was the 4th leading cause of disability in the world. It's expected to be the 2nd leading cause over the next decade. And look what that does to the productivity of our country. 37 million missed days of work with an economic cost of at least $53 billion. That's $53 billion lost to our economy every year. Well, today there is a major step being taken to cure depression. The architect of the plan has, with commitment and compassion, brought together a team of innovative and brilliant scientific thinkers. They have begun to conduct the most innovative research being done today. And now to find out how and why this unique approach is finally happening, we need to hear from the chairman and the founder of the Hope for Depression Research Foundation. It is my great pleasure to introduce to all of you today, Audrey.
Chuck, thank you so much for sharing that amazing information with us. My mother, Hope, suffered from clinical depression for most of her late adult life. This is her favorite photo of herself when she was in, I think, her early 20s. This is one of the last photos taken of my mother and our family before she passed away. My mother was a teacher, a writer, a poet, a very talented, outgoing, upbeat woman. My 2 sisters, father and I, witnessed decades of misdiagnosis, trials of medication, troublesome side effects, psychic pain, and the life-sapping loss of energy that is a mark of depression. At the onset of her illness, we were confused. We were frightened. We were frustrated from the lack of communication with the doctors. Years ago, they either weren't allowed to discuss things with their family or they didn't. We didn't really know what was happening. We at times were very angry at everything. We just didn't know why this was happening. We were ashamed because you didn't talk about these things and you had a mother that wasn't feeling well. We were really upset at times, of course, and we felt very helpless. In the course of being a patient advocate for my mother and trying to understand her numerous medications and her condition, I was fortunate to meet some wonderful doctors and psychopharmacologists who introduced me to 2 brilliant scientists, Jaak Panksepp and Mark Solms. You'll hear about them a little bit later. 2 of the most remarkable people and visionary researchers who helped me understand what was going on in depression research. I know Chuck said this, but I'd like to repeat it. Are you aware that in the last 20 years, since the discovery of the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the SSRIs, except for small incremental advances, there has been no change in the basic treatment of depression in 20 years? I was stunned to learn this. I thought a new medication or treatment was in the pipeline every month. When my mother passed away in December of 2005, here in Palm Beach, actually, it was as though a light bulb went off in my head. For many years, as most of you here in the audience, I had both raised funds and donated to many, many worthy charities in culture and the arts. And I think it's very important to have a whole breadth of experience and interest in our lives. But I vow to do everything in my power to help conquer this dreaded illness. With the encouragement and generosity of my husband, Martin, and with this remarkable team, 2 of whom you'll meet, I founded and funded the the Hope for Depression Research Foundation a year and a half ago in honor of my mother, Hope. Isn't it ironic that that was her name? Its mission is to fund pioneering research to find the origins, better treatment, prevention, and an ultimate cure for depression and its related disorders, bipolar, anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and ADHD. In a short year and a half, we have privately funded $5 million worth of research at 43 leading universities in the US and Europe. Let me show you the structure of HDRF. We have a board of directors with 2 leading psychiatrists and neuroscientists. We have our research co-directors, these 2 amazing doctors you'll hear about. And here's our scientific advisory council. The doctors who are on our board and our directors are so connected. They know everyone virtually around the world who's doing the best of what they do. So we have doctors from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Cornell, UCLA, Mass General. We had Ray DiPaolo, who's the head of the number 2 psychiatric facility in America at Johns Hopkins. He came to our office to find out what we were doing. He was hearing about this new direction, and he, as a result of meeting with us, went on to our scientific advisory council and is doing one of the most amazing new research studies that is being done in Johns Hopkins. We also have 2 Nobel Prize winners. We have a leadership committee of people who have been part of this, like Jackie, like Lise, right from the beginning. These are people who really are committed to doing something very unique in life, to help us with this, to bring people in, to bring potential donors in, and some other wonderful people that are behind this. We have an arts committee that we've just begun to form, from interior designers to fashion designers to writers, and I predict we'll have about 50 designers and creative people or more, and they're going to plan special events that we can do that bring in their creativity, because there's such a problem with this in the creative community all over the world. And we have, today, 2 of the scientists who are actually doing research for HDRF, or Hope for Depression Research Foundation. They will explain to you about the pioneering direction of our research. You're on.
The mission that Audrey outlined with such compassion and passion seems so clear, and yet it is quite complicated. And to understand it better, we'd like to introduce to you Dr. Peter Freed, directly behind me here. He's now the assistant professor of clinical psychiatry at Columbia, where he focuses on neuroimaging of emotion. Maggie Zellner, at the other lectern, is a licensed psychoanalyst and behavioral neuroscientist. Without further ado, we're ready to learn.
Thank you.